This week, we're returning to the Oral History Archive to hear the story of Henry Ross Perot, Sr. Perot was a very successful businessman who credits most of his accomplishments to the basic lessons he learned as a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout in the 1930s and 40s. We'll learn more about this interesting American and Scouter in this edition of Artifact of the Week. Ross Perot was born on June 27, 1930 in Texarkana, Texas. While Perot credits his scouting experiences as key to his success, he acknowledges that the foundation set by his parents was equally important to all that he has accomplished.
I grew up in Texarkana, Texas, born in 1930 in the Depression, lived under very modest circumstances, but I've always felt that I was born rich because I had such wonderful parents. One of my favorite stories about my parents as I was a little boy is during the Depression, the poorest people would come into Texarkana riding on the freight train, and they were called hobos. They would get out on 29th Street and walk up a gravel street past our house. They would all come to our house, knock on the door, and ask for food. And with very limited resources, my mother would always feed them. We never had to keep the door locked. We never had to be worried that they would be violent. And then one day a man said, "Lady, you have a lot of people coming here for food?" She says, "Yes, we do." He says, "Do you want me to show you why?" And he took her out to the curb, and there was a mark on the curb. The old story, "You're a mark," that goes back to that point. And she said, "That's why people come here." And after he left, I turned to Mother. I said, "Mother, you want me to wash that off?" She says, "No, son. These are people just like us. They're down on their luck. We should help them." My dad was in the cotton business. It was a seasonal business. He was my best friend. He would pick me up every day after school, and we'd ride horses till sunset. And more than anything else, though, he was a wonderful role model of what a father should be. When I started my first job, I was 6 years old. I never got paid anything unless I did something. My dad wrote down instructions about how to be successful in business. It was on his hand typewriter. The first thing says, "The world wants things done, not excuses. One thing done well is worth a million good excuses." Then they're 35, and the last one says, "The less you leave to chance, the better chance you have." He was very careful to see that I never got a job that paid me until I did something. So I first started out selling Christmas cards. It was great business till after Christmas, and that went away. Then I sold garden seeds. I'm 6 now, going on to 7.
Okay.
And then that was great in the spring. And then I realized these are seasonal businesses. So they're great while they're going on, but then it disappears. So then I sold Saturday Evening Post door to door year round. And then I went from there to paper routes, and I can go on and on and on and on. But I was working all my life. But the best part of my life was with my family and my parents during very, very difficult financial times. And my sister and I always felt like, we were probably the 2 richest children in Texarkana because of our parents.
A young man who lived near the Perot family was someone whom Perot admired and wanted to craft his life after. In fact, it was this influence that drew Perot to scouting, specifically Cub Scouting, in the first place.
And now finally, I'm 9 years old. I'm still working. I never stopped working. And I was old enough to be a Cub Scout. There was a young man down the street from me that was my role model. He was almost an idol. His name was Josh Morris. His parents owned the Offenhauser Insurance Company. They lived in a beautiful home, and he was just everything you'd ever want to be as a man. And Josh was active in scouting, and so when I was old enough to be a Cub Scout, I immediately joined a den. Mrs. Overhalser was my den mother. She was a great lady. They lived about 5 blocks from our house. Our den meetings were at her home. So it was an easy way to walk down the street and go to Cub Scout meetings. And I then read through the books, and I said, well, there's bobcat, wolf, bear, lion. I said, I want to make sure I achieve all of these things, and I got through all of that.
Next for Perot was Boy Scouts, and again, the influence of Josh Morris guided Perot's decision-making process, not only as it relates to scouting, but also his college plans. As a scout, Perot was involved in all the various service projects the BSA participated in to support the war effort for World War II. He also served in a variety of leadership positions, including being a patrol leader. These leadership opportunities and lessons were not lost on Perot.
And now finally I'm 12, and my dream was to be in Troop 18 because that was Josh Morris's troop, sponsored by his family's company. And I became a member of Troop 18, and then I read through the scout book and realized that you could be an Eagle Scout in 13 months. The first time in my life I set goals and objectives. I said, I'm going to do it in 13 months. And so I became an Eagle Scout because I stayed on schedule. I was working all the time in the summer, but one summer I was able to take 1 week off to go to Boy Scout camp. And this is a Boy Scout camp up in Arkansas. And it cost $7, very expensive to go stay for a week. And so I was up there for a week, had a lot of fun. We didn't have swimming pools, we had creeks and so on and so forth. So it was really just a great place to be. But my dream was to go to Fillmore. Philmont,
It's Philmont now.
Philmont. But that was out of the picture. It was just too expensive. You know, it had to be gone for several weeks, so on and so forth. But after I was successful in business and what have you, I couldn't resist going by to see it at least. That was many years later. But I earned my Eagle Scout badge and then earned some of the beyond it, you know, the little, what do you call it? I'm sorry, I forget the little palms. The palms. Earned the palms, sorry, forgot that. And but the things, the principles I learned in scouting, the principles I learned from the Morris family, for example, they were so financially secure, they had tennis courts, a tennis court at their home, but they all let all the children in the neighborhood play tennis anytime the court was empty. And they just were just such wonderful examples. And to show you the long-term impact of that family, Josh was older than I was. He graduated from high school while I was still in high school. He was so talented, he went to MIT from Texarkana. But then he decided he wanted to go to the Naval Academy. And when Josh went to the Naval Academy, even though I had never seen the Navy, never seen a ship, never seen the ocean, I knew I wanted to go to the Naval Academy.
Early in his life, Perot thought about being a doctor, but by the time he was in high school, becoming a successful businessman became his long-range career goal. To get his start, he began applying to the Naval Academy, and for 3 years, his appointment came up empty. Not to waste any time, Perot enrolled in Texarkana College, where he was elected student body president, led the efforts to publish a yearbook, helped develop an intramural sports system, and worked to expand the school's campus.
I graduated in high school. I went to junior college in Texarkana because it was only $12.50 a semester. Mm-hmm. My sister was at TCU. She was older than I was, and my family couldn't afford to send us both. And of course, I just worked my way through Texarkana College. And applied, I started in high school trying to get in the Naval Academy. We had no political contacts. Then I went 1 year at Texarkana College. I went the second year at Texarkana College. After 3 years, suddenly, and it's right over here, this telegraph comes through the mail, principal appointment to the Naval Academy. I asked no questions, I went. When I got there, everything went fine except as a boy I broke horses. That was another one of my jobs. And before I learned not to let them buck, I got bucked off a number of times and had a badly broken nose. The captain said, son, you passed physical, everything's fine, but you've got a broken nose, you've got to go back to Texas, get that fixed, and we'll let you in. I said, I can't do that for 2 reasons. He said, what do you mean? He said, I can't afford the trip home, I can't afford the operation. And he said, well, how did you break your nose? And I told him he was a horse lover. So come on in, I'll fix it. I should have a cute pug little nose, but he never touched it. So, but anyhow, I did get in the Naval Academy. 30, and it was an incredible experience to be there. And I could go on for hours of all the wonderful experiences. We had outstanding young people at the Naval Academy. I got to meet these young men from all over the United States, and as far away as Hawaii and what have you. It was just an incredible experience to be associated because they were so outstanding. And so they were great role models and motivators for me. Then 30 years later, I get a call from a person. He says, Perot, did you ever wonder how you got an appointment to the Naval Academy? I says, yes, but I wasn't going to ask, because it just came through the Western Union one day. And he said, well, I was the senator's aide. We were cleaning out his desk. And I said, Senator, we have an unfilled appointment to the Naval Academy. And the senator said, does anybody want it? And he says, well, there's a boy from Texas County that's been trying to get it for 3 years. And the senator said, we'll give it to him. He says, Ross, your name never came up. I said, that may be the key. But all of these things, the leadership training and all those things I got in scouting made the good luck I had in the Navy possible. And Josh Morris as a role model made me want to always reach for the stars and do the best I could, not that I could match him.
As a midshipman, Perot served as the chairman of the Naval Academy's Honor Committee, which helped establish the honor system that guides its students even today. He also served as a battalion commander, a role which gave him something he views as a great honor.
Believe it or not, I was asked to escort President Eisenhower and Mrs. Eisenhower on a tour through the Naval Academy. Now, I couldn't believe that here I am from Texarkana, that I would ever get to meet the five-star general, the president, one of the great men of the 20th century. And guess what? He was just like your neighbor next door. This is now after he was president and all this occurred. He was just the nicest, warmest person. She was as nice as she could be. And to show you how times change, he grew up in Kansas initially, but moved to Denison, Texas, because his dad was laying railroad tracks in 1900 for $1 a day. Isn't that amazing? And he went from there to West Point and to President of the United States, five-star general, instrumental in winning World War II. And so for me to be able to take them on a tour, it doesn't get better than that.
Following his time in the Navy, Perot entered the workforce as a sales professional for IBM. During his time there, it is reported that Perot excelled at his duties, and in 1962 he even met his annual sales goals in just 19 days. During his time with IBM, Perot continually pushed ideas he thought would benefit his customers to the company through his supervisors. Ultimately, none of these were adopted by IBM, but the perseverance he learned in applying to the Naval Academy and the work ethic and goal setting he learned from his father and from scouting led him to found Electronic Data Systems, EDS, in 1962 with a $1,000 loan from his wife's savings. EDS grew and in the early 1980s was purchased by General Motors for $2.5 billion. Those same values were what guided Perot as he led EDS.
Yeah, I was, patrol leader starting out, and I had a number of others, but I can't remember what they were. But again, see, that's leadership training, and most people don't get it. And it's so important to get leadership training, and the fundamentals of leadership never change. And somebody said, say it all in one sentence. I says, treat other people the way you'd like to be treated.
Yes.
And like in our company, there's only one class of person, that's full partner. Everybody has the same benefits, everybody. But if we have a marginal year and don't make our goals, all the raises and bonuses and recognition go to the frontline troops working with the customers. And the last to get it are the people running the company because we didn't make the goals. That's not the way most companies work. That builds a tremendous spirit within the company. And there's no limit on where you can go. I don't care where you went to MIT or just graduated from high school. I'm interested in what you do and what you've done lately. And I'm interested in people who live the principles of scouting. They get things done. They're not being corporate politicians coming in trying to butter up and that sort of thing. They're just out on the front lines getting it done and producing results. So all of those, you see, it just always goes right back to square one here. And the principle, you can go back to the 5th century, principle of leadership have never changed because human nature doesn't change.
In 1988, Perot and his son Ross Jr. founded a new technology services company, Perot Systems Corporation, which eventually became an industry leader in the healthcare industry, particularly in the area of digitization and automation of medical records. The company was sold to Dell Computers in 2009 for $3.9 billion. During his oral history interview, Perot did not talk about his work as a POW MIA advocate, nor his involvement in rescuing 2 EDS employees being held hostage in Iran in 1978 through 79. He also did not speak about his 2 presidential campaigns. Despite these not being part of his told story, you don't have to look hard to see the values and lessons he learned from his parents and scouting were always part of his analysis and decision-making processes. Steve Jobs, who Perot bankrolled his company Next, after Jobs left Apple, said, "The thing that impressed me most about Ross was that while most people focus on the bottom line, which he certainly did, what Ross looked at first was what I call the top line, which is the people and the strategy."
I just say stick to the principles, because the principles never change. And no matter how society changes, if we can keep the principles of scouting alive and well, we'll have a much stronger, better world. Because we'll be taking care of one another. And that's what society's all about, not looking after number one. Just make sure that you have your priorities straight, to help other people at all times, keep yourself physically alert, morally straight, so on. Pretty basic stuff, right? When I look back on my life, though, and I think of all the good fortune I've had with my family, my business, and so on and so forth, I have to give my family, my parents, the highest credit. But all those things I learned in scouting and those principles that I learned in scouting were in absolute parallel with what my parents expected of me. And the last thing I ever wanted to do was disappoint them, because I loved them so much and they'd sacrificed so much for me. But going to that meeting and having all those principles of scouting reinforced once a week, and then setting the goals and objectives to make eagle in a minimal time, and so on and so forth, those were great lessons that have really been beyond helpful to me all through my life. So it's just an honor to be associated with scouting.
Ross Perot and his wife Margot were married in 1956 and had 5 children, including his son Ross Jr., who is a major financial contributor to the Summit Bechtel Reserve. Perot also told an interesting story about the pronunciation of his last name. His father said the family came to Texas from French settlers in Louisiana and said you pronounce the name as Perot, as in corn row, cotton row, Perot. Another part of the family came to America through Philadelphia and used the more formal pronunciation of Perot. One family member went to Bermuda and became the first postmaster in that island. There, they called him Perot. When he arrived at the Naval Academy, they said, "Son, you don't even know how to pronounce your name." Perot said, "What do you mean?" The official said, "You're Perot." Perot died on July 9, 2009, after a 5-month battle with leukemia. He was 89. He is survived by his wife Margot, 5 children, and 19 grandchildren. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Join us next time as we continue to learn more about the history of scouting through the collection of the National Scouting Museum and Artifact of the Week.